it's the one industry I believe that true collaboration is the actual success of a project.
Oh, mate, 100%. My dream is to improve the residential building industry for all involved. Throughout this podcast, we're going to be chatting to all types of industry experts to make sure that builders, tradies and clients all have a fantastic experience. G'day guys, so welcome back to another episode of Level Up with me, Duayne Pearce. We've had to change studios a bit for today. We've got some wild weather happening, so it's a bit noisy in the shed. Pretty excited about today. So I've got here with me today Paul Coulson. So he's from Earthborn by Design. Paul does incredible work in the interior design space. We followed each other for a while on Instagram and get on really well. So welcome, Paul. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me. It's a very new space for me to be in, podcast world. So, yeah.
It's
good to have a chat.
Yeah, no, it's good, mate. And look, everything I'm doing is about lifting the reputation of the industry and giving people an insight into what real people in the industry are dealing with, how they get into their careers and all that type of thing. So let's start off with that. How, you've got a pretty interesting story behind how you've ended up where you are. So can you take us right back to maybe even as early as when you're at school and sort of tell us your journey and where you've come from?
I was an incredibly lazy student. I would rock up to the exam on the morning and kind of say, what's the exam about today? Yeah. Institutions were a struggle for me. I just didn't quite understand the structure of them. Yeah. But I made it through. And I always wanted to study medicine. That was the goal. But of course, I didn't quite get the marks to be able to do that. And anyway, we had an aptitude test towards the end of school, and I went to vocational guidance, they called it. Yeah. And the assessor pretty much said to me, medicine's probably not your thing because all your patients would live with you. So I ended up doing a commerce degree. Yeah. And the funny story about that is I can't add 2 and 2. So it's kind of, I don't know quite how I ended up in commerce, but I did. But I always had a latent kind of passion for design, or the design space. So
in school, did you do graphics or any of that type of? No,
way back when we were in school, it was all biology and history and math and science. So certainly the education space has changed. And back in South Africa, it was a very structured environment. Anyway, back in 2002, my career started in advertising and marketing, actually. Yeah. And then went to insurance, and I was absolutely useless at that because the joke around town was that we'll give Paul a checkbook because he'll want to pay everybody's claim. So the insurance game didn't work for me, but the client services part of it really appealed to me, and I got quite involved in that space. But then I started my own below-the-line marketing agency. So I did a lot of product launches and advertising for product launches. Yeah.
Geez, you've had a variety, mate.
Yeah. So I've had many parts, and that lasted for quite a while. I had a business called The Bright Side, and back in South Africa, and it was a really, really amazing experience. But there was something that didn't feel right, and this was back in the day when you could still advertise alcohol and tobacco and win awards for those things, and it just didn't feel right because I don't smoke, I don't drink excessively. Yes, we're putting together these great campaigns, but it just didn't sit well with me.
So fast forward to
2015, I decide I'm going to reinvent myself again. Yeah. And I had done an interior design diploma, which ended up in a bottom drawer somewhere.
Was that in Australia or in South Africa?
Yeah, in Australia. So while I was doing this other business, because it was the building industry, I thought, that would be a nice add-on.
Yeah.
And I did an interior design diploma. Never thought much of it. I always had an instinct for this stuff, but I didn't do anything with it.
Well, you mentioned before, even back at school, you had an interest in design and bits and pieces.
Yeah, so I did. So
it's obviously been this thing that's been floating around in the back of your mind for all these years. I would do stuff
for friends and family over the years, and everyone said, "Oh, this is really where you should be."
Yeah.
But it wasn't a serious job, and certainly not for a man.
Yeah.
It was like, no, you're not going to become an interior designer. Anyway, so 2015, 24th of January, I walk out, and then of course on the 25th of January, I wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. and go, what I just done? But the clarity I had in that moment that it was the right decision. I don't know what the next step would be, but I knew that the decision to end what I was doing was the right one.
Yeah.
And literally while I was sitting out there, we were living on acreage on the Gold Coast, and it was just beautiful, beautiful summer's morning. And there was quite a bit of dew on the lawn out back, and the sun was coming through the trees. It was just idyllic.
Magic.
And I just came up with this name. It was Earthborn, and this is how it all happened. It just kind of, in this moment.
So in that moment, you've started a new business.
I started a new business. And that morning I was already designing logos, and suddenly I was going to do interior design just out of, a passion. I thought, well, it's late stage in my life. Best I do something with it. And
so at this stage, just for guys listening, so at this stage, you're
47,
and you've jumped in the deep end again, and a completely different field, completely different business.
My partner thought I'd lost the plot and was suggesting that I needed therapy and all of that kind of, which is true, but
you're following a passion. I think
that was exactly what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good story, because you've followed something that's always had an inkling that's
always been there, latently. And I remember growing up with my grandmother, who was very artistic on the farm, and I would spend school because I was at boarding school most of my life, and then go school holidays on the farm. And she had an immaculate home.
Yeah.
And she was all about making the home, and it was about the food and about design and color. And so there was something there.
It's funny, I like that you say that, because it's something that I've definitely learnt in more recent times. And I love building, and so passionate about it. Obviously trying to change a whole industry, but most of the things that we end up doing, so many people don't follow their dreams.
Yeah.
And for me, I've only realised recently that mine comes back from a similar, when I was younger, my mum's parents had a big dairy farm, and we spent a lot of time on there, and my great grandfather was a builder, and I think your passion always stems from somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you can pinpoint it, I think that will separate you from other people.
Yeah.
Because,
and I can, I have vivid memories of her garden and of her home and how she used to put things together and move things around. And it always stuck with me.
Because that story is what will sell your business to people, because you're more than just a designer. I'm more than just a builder.
Exactly.
You've got a passion for something, and there's a reason behind that passion. And mate, just to hear that story and how you've got to where you are, I'm actually blown away sitting here to know that you only started that business in 2015. We're currently sitting in November 2021.
Yeah.
And you're
2 years of that is COVID.
2 years of that is COVID, and you're a multi-award winner. You've picked up some awesome awards. I love the stuff you do and what I see on your social media. So, mate, talk us through. So you had that moment. You come up with a name. The fact that you come up with that name, sitting out on the grass, seeing the mist on all that stuff.
Incredible.
So take us through how it's been. Obviously, you were pretty savvy when it comes to business.
I think it did help. When you've kind of come from a corporate background, you have an understanding of structures and things that need to happen. yeah, it was a completely new space, of course. And
Yeah.
Lone Ranger, I didn't know anybody in the industry.
So,
You
so
know,
how
so
did you start? How did you get work? How did you go from that? How did you go from coming up with a name, taking like walking out of one business, starting at one just from waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning,
yeah.
to actually be able to get work in the door and pay the bills?
Yeah, you know what? The moment I made the decision, I was that focused that I started telling people this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
Didn't people go, "Hey, last week you was on bamboo
yeah,
floor"?
last week I'm selling bamboo floors and Polonia timber, and here you are now today. You're going to fluff some cushions for us.
Yeah.
But it was never about, you know. So the interesting thing about the reason I wanted to go down this path was never about, yes, the finished product is great, and I like doing the whole process, you know, from this kind of structure, we're
Yeah.
stripping it out and we're putting it back together,
Yeah.
to chopping the cushion. You know,
Yeah.
that's the journey for me. But it's important for me to be involved in this first part of it, is the spatial design and getting involved with,
How they
watching it
live.
actually
Yeah.
strips out and starting from scratch. So that's the stuff that really gets me going.
It's very
Anyway,
personal.
yeah, it is personal. You know, you're dealing with people's personal spaces.
Mm.
So my very first job was, wow, good memory. My very first job was it was a tiny job, but it was like a triumph. You know,
Yeah.
it was like $560. I'm going to get paid to
Yeah.
do what I love doing, and
Yeah.
that was my very first job.
Yeah. So what was it?
And it's a repeat client, by the way, because I'm doing work for her now again.
Awesome. Awesome.
So yeah, so the very first job was it was all soft furnishing stuff, and moving furniture around, and
Yeah.
and I had no idea how I was supposed to be charging for stuff, so I just made it up as I was going.
Yeah.
And I think so many of us do that,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
you've just got to learn. School doesn't teach us this stuff, Duayne. You
Yeah.
can, it's only experience that really, and I'm learning every day. So
And I think it
never stops.
It seems to be across our industry, whether you're a builder, a tradie, a designer, or whoever, no one talks to each other.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can pick up the phone and talk to another designer like, "Hey mate, what should I be charging for my
This
service?"
is what's so good about what you're doing. Is
Yeah.
trying to create this community for our industry. The design and construction industry. We need each other.
Yeah.
It's the one industry I believe that true collaboration is the actual success of a project.
Oh, mate, 100%.
And for me, it's about even getting to builders to understand. Don't treat interior designers as a cost center. They're not a cost center.
Yeah.
They
Mate, I'm guilty.
part.
I'm guilty of that. Like
Don't put them as a line item in your spreadsheet and say this is going to cost me.
Yeah.
It is not going to cost you.
Yeah.
It is something that it gets passed into the client. Builders want to build. Builders don't care about Mrs. Smith and her 17 tiles. So why get involved with that? That's what we're there for.
It's mate, look, I'm definitely guilty of that. Obviously you're saying like we do the pack process,
Yeah.
we get him paid and become one of the other consultants, and like developing and improving that process has made me such a better builder, because I was that guy. I was that builder for so many years that didn't want an interior designer on the job, or like just wanted to get given the drawings and go and do what I do.
So
And
why do you think that was?
it was because I didn't understand it.
Okay.
And to be honest, the main driving thing was I always thought it was a pain in the ass, because then I had to manage someone else. They would be suggesting things. I'm trying to keep the job on a budget. They're suggesting things that are over budget. I'm the one that's then got to do all the variation paperwork. And so I avoided it. I talked people out of it. And like I've completely flipped on that, but now I actually understand what you do. And like even building designers and architects, like just me going and being involved in those meetings, now I understand why things are getting put where they're getting put. Like you guys find out about the people's personalities, how they live their
So
life.
I always talk about the couch that Mrs. Smith has bought before their house is built,
Yeah,
and we hear that stuff.
yeah.
Builders don't necessarily hear that.
No, I do now, but all I was thinking about was how, like, I just wanted to build it. Give me the plans, I'll build it.
Yeah.
You can come back when we're finished, do your thing. Like, just let me
Yeah.
do my job. But for you to be able to do your job really well, you have to be involved with us to make sure it all comes together.
And I say this over and over again, just because we have a vision, our vision's nothing without you.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
definitely...
That's where the true collaboration comes in.
Yeah. And I think, like, builders need to... I've had to learn and improve and change my ways and things, but I think what holds a lot of builders back is exactly what's holding me back. Like, we're worried that people are going to step on our toes. We're worried that it's going to delay our jobs. It's going to take up more time. It's more paperwork. But it's all working in together. And at the end of the day, like, obviously we know now because we run a really efficient, successful business.
Yeah.
It's how I manage it. Like, it's my job
Exactly right.
as a builder to make sure that I allow in my schedule time to meet with you, meet with the client, make sure everyone's happy. I understand what you're trying to achieve. I understand what I've got to do on site. Like, and a big thing in the past was I didn't understand that. Like, I would have a set of drawings. I didn't understand the overall look and finish and feel that you were trying to get because the clients had deep, meaningful conversations with you about, like, because again, like you, going back to spending time on your grandma's farm, the client has something in them.
There's a story.
Yeah, there's a story there. Yeah. And now that
the
I
story
get...
matters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And to me,
absolutely.
like, we're very much on the same page with this. Like, it is all about the journey now.
Yeah.
Like, going from that initial phone call or that initial email inquiry, whatever it may be, to meeting the client, building a relationship, getting on really well. And you touched on it before, I'll get you to tell a story, like seeing the client at handover. Like, a lot of the times with tears in their eyes, like, you've done that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we, and I use the collective we because it doesn't help. Yes, it starts off, every project starts off with a conversation.
yeah,
It's the idea. But the end result is a truly collaborative, everybody is involved, and I like acknowledging everybody in that process.
Yeah.
It's not a me.
yeah,
It really isn't a me.
yeah. There's no I in team, is there?
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can chop the cushion and give them a platter on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock is a result of many hours of many people.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like do a workshop at the Building Design Centre and you're talking with people and they're talking about their bathroom renovation and making them understand, when they ask the question, so why are they so expensive? And you say to them, well, they're 12 different trades in your little bathroom.
yeah, yeah.
And then only does the penny drop.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff that's really important and acknowledging the whole team.
Yeah.
And learning from the team.
So you, with the jobs, like the stuff that I've seen you do the last few years, mate, like, again, it's blown my mind to know that you've only been doing it for a bit over 5 years. Like, so you, like, how are people finding you? Like, is it from your Instagram? Is it from your market, like other marketing?
I think I've been very fortunate as well because a lot of my work has been word of mouth.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you get complacent. I mean, it's like you, Duayne. Just because you're a successful builder, you don't stop making people aware that you're still relevant in the industry. You've got to be available. And accessible. The other thing is accessibility.
Yeah.
There's not enough of that. People need to know that they can access you.
Yeah. Yeah. And people need to see I think, more places. Like, you can't just be one place. I do believe, I think social media is the new word of mouth. We get so much work from our social media now, and we do. Obviously, we put a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, but it's also your reputation as a good builder. You've got to give yourself some credit. It's not just in social media.
But it's showing. Like, I love showing the real thing. Like, I love showing like what my team's doing on site, why we're doing it, what products we're using,
Yeah.
like how we're installing them, all that stuff. And also we quite often show a lot of the something that's gone wrong or something that's going to cost us some money or like there's
But I think that's also important. So
yeah
even in my social media stuff, I don't just show the pretty result.
yeah
You've got to show the good, bad, and ugly, and
yeah
you've got to explain to me people why things happen, why the process is the process.
yeah
So it's not all glamorous.
yeah. So I think you're very similar to me. I know you're very hands on
Yeah.
with your work. So you don't just do the design,
Yeah.
but you flow through, you manage the site, you make sure it's all done.
Well, yeah. So the tricky part about that conversation is I cannot call myself a project manager,
Yeah,
irrespective of the fact that that's essentially what we do. But I do facilitate the process. I do facilitate the process with the client from the start to the finish.
yeah,
So I become the agent for the client, and all communication basically
yeah,
filters through me, and we disseminate that information.
yeah,
And I just find that process easier, where the clients are not having to deal with 20 different people,
yeah,
and then the communication is also clearer.
yeah,
Look, it's not a perfect world, and I don't always get it right, and then clients might come on site and have a discussion with the trade, and you know what it's
yeah,
like.
yeah.
So, but the bottom line is that I like to be involved from the design process right through to the end of the process.
So handing over. So do you have a team? Like, is it more than you?
Yeah, lots of us. So the three of us. I've got one full-time person,
Yeah.
and then a part-time designer on contract.
Yeah,
But in terms of the actual teams, for example, that would be the builder and their team.
yeah,
I try to fashion the business around having a collection of good trades.
Yeah.
I've kissed a lot of toads.
yeah.
But
Well, that's mate. I
you've
think
got
that's
to
the
go
industry.
through that process to
Yeah.
get the right teams.
Yeah,
And even then, it doesn't. I think complacency can very easily set in, and that's what you've got to avoid through any relationship.
and I think
Is
that's
you've got to keep on keeping each other in check, actually.
yeah, and I think like I believe a lot of people don't, I guess, understand exactly what's involved in projects. Like you said, like a bathroom, one bathroom has 12 trades, and that's the trades. That's not counting all the suppliers you got to talk to as well.
Exactly.
So like there is a hell of a lot of phone calls, emails, decisions, payments to be made, deliveries to be organised, schedules to be worked in. And I think that's a great example as a bathroom. Like a small thing, just as renovating a bathroom, involves a lot of management, and I do believe a lot of people overlook the value in that and what's involved in
You
that.
know what? That's exactly right, Duayne. It's the value proposition, and people understanding the value that we actually bring.
Yeah,
It's the behind the scenes stuff. If we were to, and you touched on something earlier before we got
turn the
the
lights on.
Hollywood lights on us, was the fact that people don't necessarily see the number of hours that we put in.
Yeah,
They don't see the behind the scenes stuff. They see us for a site visit, and they see
the
us.
pretty pictures on
They see the pretty
Instagram.
pictures
Yeah.
on Instagram, but the actual work that happens is.
So we'll talk. Let's get onto that. So we were talking before we turned the lights on. Our industry at this point in time is basically unprecedented.
Madness.
Like
Madness.
what's happening, the price increases, material availability, contractors not showing up. Like it's really crazy times. And like I know it's taking a little bit of toll on yourself, and I know I've really struggled as well. And I was actually been having a couple of conversations with a really good mate of mine over the last couple of days, just to get my head around where it's at. And I've been putting so much time and energy into trying to figure out a solution, but the issue is, in the current climate, there is no solution. So all that we can do, and this is coming from a mate of mine, we need to just manage and mitigate that. And it's like, who gets through this and who survives will be who manages the
and
best.
I think it's about one's ability to be adaptable.
Yeah,
When you're rigid in this space, you're going to come unstuck.
yeah,
And I always talk about plan A is great, plan B is wonderful, plan C is likely, plan D is where you end up.
yeah,
And that's the reality of our industry.
Yeah.
So you can plan to the nth degree,
and that's in good times.
and that's in good times. Exactly right.
And now we're getting down towards why.
You know,
That's,
the boom's great.
Yeah.
We all accept that it's great, but it does come with its challenges, and the challenges are things that are out of our control. So the interesting thing for me with what's currently happening is clients would be aware of all of this stuff because the news is full of it. You know, the news is telling us every day what the issues are and the challenges that we are facing, and the supplies and containers sitting on wharves, and it just, there's enough information. So from a consumer point of view, it's not like this information is new or a surprise.
Yeah, a lot of it's scaring them, but I think.
But the interesting thing is, the minute they engage the likes of you and I, they think they're immune to those problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Which creates more challenge for us in a way, because we have to be the problem solver.
Yeah.
I'm paying you, so hey.
Yeah.
Yes, the wharf, the container's on the wharf, but that's not my problem. There's no timber, that's not my problem.
We're putting so much time and energy and effort into just education at the moment. Like I do believe the only way through this is managing. Like we have multiple clients right at this point in time that want to go to contract, and there's no way in the world I'm signing a contract today for a project that might not start for 3, 6, or even 12 months' time in the current climate.
That's just smart business, isn't it?
Actually. Yeah, but with our industry, there is a lot of guys out there that are doing it because they need the next job. They're chasing the next dollar, and so we're definitely holding off on that. So we're basically, how we're managing it at the moment is, we give our clients a price, and if the price is accepted and that's all good and they're happy with that, we basically educate them and make them aware that, look, that's the price today. In a week or a month or 6 months, that price can be very different. We will re-look at that price when we are ready to go to contract, when your finance is sorted, when your house settles, when the land settles, whatever it may be, and then we'll go to contract with an exact cost.
Yeah, more accurate.
And then on top of that, we're communicating so much with, and I think this is really important for any tradie or builder out there at the moment, and designer, or we are talking so closely with our suppliers, our reps, our wholesales, whoever we can get in contact with. For the first time ever, the last 3 months, I'm reading every email I get from associations and suppliers that are telling us, in this month, this price rise is coming, we're expecting this, we're expecting that. And that way I can pass all that information on to my clients, I can educate them, and I don't think at this point in time we can eliminate not losing money on jobs. If we go into a contract with a fixed price on any item, it's going to fluctuate within the period of that project. So we've just got to be pricing our jobs really accurately, making sure we're covering our overheads and all those types of things. But one thing we were touching on before, that is what's really sucking up a lot of our costs at the moment,
and energy, Joe.
And energy, yeah. I've never, between myself, my supervisor, and my wife in the office, in the last 4 months, I reckon the time that we are spending on each project has gone up 3, 4, 5 times what it was even 4 months ago. Every day there's something delayed. There's a material that's
and that has a consequence. There's this flow-on effect.
Affects the schedule, and just as one example, we got a project at the moment. It's only it's a tiny little extension, internal refurb, and we are trying everything we can to keep that job as close to schedule as we can. But the roof's gone up, the scaffolders can't get there to pull the scaffold down, so we can't get windows in, we can't clad the job. Now we're having all this rain, so we've tried to do as much internal work as we can.
Yeah.
We now can't get the windows, they're delayed. We got our plumbing fixture delivery, which has been ordered for probably close to 2.5, 3 months. The entire order turned up, bar the 3 in-wall mixer bodies.
Oh, wow.
We chased them up. They said they don't know where they are. They then sent out 2, and we're like, well, where's the 3rd one? They're like, well, we can't tell you. So that's a drama in itself. So that's become a daily follow-up and chase up, which takes up time. Then we've got our plasterer scheduled in to come and plaster the job. He can't plaster the wet areas because the plumber's obviously got to come in and fit those mixers. The plumber's ringing us up saying, hey, I'm booked out till Christmas. When do you know when those mixers are going to get here?
Yeah.
So it's just it's just a constant battle.
It's a juggling act.
Yeah.
Constant juggling.
Yeah, but I do think whoever manages that the best, and I'm a big believer that in the current environment, it's the strongest that will survive. Like you've really got to put in the time, put in the effort. I'm talking, and like we touched on before, like I'm talking to as many people as I can. Like you've contacted me for advice, I'll talk to you for advice. Like I'm sure through conversations, like you'll give me a tip or a hint that I'll be able to use. I'll give you a tip or a hint. Yeah, I think the more people you can talk to in the industry, we've just got to work together.
Yeah, and that's why what you're doing, Duayne, is so important. The idea that we're an island is the problem.
Yeah,
in business, that is. We have to tap into our communities and find your tribe. I call it that's the word that I use about the people that you kind of surround yourself with, because they're the ones that will help carry you. So the ones that support you and can call you out on your bullshit and all of that stuff. Those are the ones that you want around.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want the ones that are just going to validate you all the time. You need people around you to ground you, and that's the important part. Otherwise, it's a very lonely industry. Certainly for me and my space as an interior designer, it can be very lonely.
Yeah,
getting the answer from the wall about the selection you've just done.
So how do you, like in your space? And we've spoken to a couple of designers about this. Like obviously with everything that's going on in the industry at the moment, how do you like obviously an architect designer that's doing the whole job, there's certain things that are going to be affected, but if you're doing all the finishes and stuff on an internal, like we're seeing that's where a lot of the holdups are at the moment. So how are you specifying a job if you don't know that plumbing fixtures or tiles?
Well, I'm only specifying what I can get
at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's
so that's the difference at the moment. So projects that are, the quick turnaround, 2-bedroom apartment kind of renovation stuff that want to go now, you've got to make sure that stuff available now.
Yeah.
If I've got to wait for Miele appliances,
it's not an option.
It's not an option. So I have to find something that's available, and the client has to be comfortable that it's the right fit for them.
Yeah, and that's a smart business move. Like I think that's a tip for everybody out there. Like whether it's a builder or a designer or whoever, like you've and that's what we're doing. Like you have to be checking that if you're going to contract, is that product available?
Is that stuff available?
And
it's a little different for me. I mean, for an apartment renovation, it's a tile or a tap. For you, it's timber, it's windows, it's way bigger, and I acknowledge that. But for Burley, there was significant timber required, and there were new doors, and so I understood that those things could potentially hold up a project.
Yeah.
But in the current market, you have to check what's available right now.
Yeah. So are you talking, like the builders that are doing work with you, are you having conversations leading up to, or while you're making the decision, like selections to see what they're hearing and what's available, or are you going straight to the supplier? And
I'm going straight to the supplier.
Yeah.
And so I try and eliminate a lot of this stuff that's going to cause the builder the headache.
Yep.
In terms of roughing stuff is just going to be on site on the day that you need it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Rather than have this pipe dream. I've picked a nice tap, but it's not going to be here for 6 months. Can you do other stuff in the meantime? So yeah, it's the way I've run my business, and I think yes, there are going to be moments where we're going to come unstuck, but to be able to be adaptable, and be able to communicate to your clients at the end of the day, that it's in their best interest.
Or at least educating them
without compromising on the quality. And I think that's the fine line that we're going to have to toe for a little while now, is not to compromise quality, because there will be a flood of product in the market that is substandard. And it's dangerous to go down that track, because you're going to be called 3 years down the track to come and fix something.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, like educating clients at the moment that yes, there may be something that's cheaper or that we can get a lot more of, but is it up to standard? Does it meet a building code? Like, has it got a watermark? Like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so that stuff's really important for me as well. Is, you know, I encourage clients never to skimp on fixtures and fittings, for example, purely because I know that if a grower tap says I've got a 15-year warranty, I'm happy. That Reese are going to be able to manage that warranty process.
Limiting your risk, like with everything.
So you've got to try and do that as much as you can.
So, mate, how tell us a bit about some of the awards you've won, because for a business that's only been going 5 years, you've
I still pinch myself all the time. But you know what? I think that's the key. The key with that, Duayne, is to be passionate about what you do, and I live and breathe this stuff. To my detriment, because your personal relationships are sacrificed, and I'm guilty. Because it's been all work and no play. But you know, I started a new business, and you know, what do they say? The first 5 years are your most crucial. Well, I'm not quite at 5 years yet, because 2 of them were COVID. But even in those 2 years, we did some incredible projects, and we got them over the line. So, the awards have been, you know, the accolade is one thing, and it's good to be recognized by industry. But it also reminds me, in moments where you have the self-doubt, and I have those often, you know, to look at what I call the wall of shame, with all the awards on them, and just go, you know what, you have to be okay with that, because you've worked bloody hard to achieve this stuff. So so since 2015, some bragging rights. Every year I have won a award, or been a finalist, so it's been an extraordinary journey between
it's fantastic.
Interior design and interior decorating. So the pillow chop and then the design work. But it's been such a good.
You got to give yourself a pat on the back, mate. Like it's like I tell my team a lot, and I don't know, I do it to myself now. Like every now and then you do just have to take a moment for yourself, relax, chill out, and give yourself a pat on the back, because like we're passionate about what we do. We do put everything into it. Like I'm definitely guilty of the same as you. Like there's definitely been times where I'm more focused on work, and the family's been let slip a little bit. But it's and I've definitely recognised that a lot in the last few years, and I prioritise family first now over work.
But it's good.
But it's been a tough, hard road to get to that. Like it hasn't just happened overnight.
But you know, we also forget though, and I think this is the key for any small business, that we're the business owner. We should be making those decisions. We shouldn't be. Who's dictating that decision to us? You know. You know, we don't have to put in a leave form.
Mate, just go back. You just mentioned before that. Because I struggle with this as well. Like you mentioned before, that you have moments where you struggle and you might get a bit down? Like what?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
you know, we're talking November. I didn't even bother this year.
yeah,
But I think this is the other thing that's really important for our industry is, and it's across the board, and it's not just a male-dominated thing. And I think we've got to be very careful about this, this gender thing. We all have a measure of mental health issues that we struggle with
yeah,
from time to time.
yeah,
I've struggled with mental health for most of my life.
yeah.
By the age of 17, I had 3 suicide attempts. So,
Holy dolly.
that was a big thing in my life. And then one day I just clicked out of it and went, I can make those choices. I failed at those attempts, so let me try something else.
Mate, that's incredible. Like,
But the important thing is to find what works for you as an individual. There's no right or wrong. And I think, a structured way of looking at mental health from a therapy point of view, for example, is not necessarily for everybody.
yeah,
Not everyone's comfortable with sitting on a couch with a stranger and talking about their
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So again, it's about finding your tribe, finding the people. And I know you've been involved with the Cool to Be Conscious boys. You've had a couple of sessions with them.
We're actually trying to we're trying to get them on, mate, and have a chat to them.
Excellent.
So have you done stuff with them?
A little beach session at a sunrise, it just makes you feel alive. So,
Yeah,
so those are the kind of strategies that work for me.
yeah,
Again, at a young age, having struggled with it and been through the army, and I think a lot of the stuff that happened with
Did you
me
say you've been
was,
in the army?
yeah,
Mate, is there anything you haven't done?
well, been a beauty queen, so yes. There's so much about our lives that is circumstantial, so
Yeah,
the way we grow up and our environments and all of that. But if you kind of use your environment as the excuse for your behavior later in life, I think it's a cop out.
yeah,
If I'd followed the path of my mother, I wouldn't be here today.
yeah,
She was a free spirit. She was an amazing woman, but she was a shocking parent.
yeah,
She wasn't ready to be a parent,
yeah,
nor was my father. So he was an absent father, but a great man. I met him much later in my life again. I'm so glad that I did, because he was an amazing man.
yeah,
But our circumstances do form a lot of what happens in our life. But if we get stuck there and use that as our excuse to
yeah,
behave badly in life beyond that point,
yeah,
I think it's a cop-out,
yeah,
personally. But I think the important thing is to find what works for you. The downtime that you now are recognizing is important for you.
yeah,
I don't do enough of that. I don't sleep. So,
yeah. Mate, I
my
definitely
3
Yeah, I
a.m., so
struggle.
if anyone wants to talk at 3 a.m.,
Get on Instagram.
that's kind of when my thinking time happens.
Yeah. Mate, I'll message you on Instagram because mate, I'm the same.
Yeah.
I need to force myself to go to bed early because it doesn't matter what time I go to bed. Between 3 and 4, I'm up.
Yeah.
And
So
then my brain's
yeah.
working and I'm thinking and
And that's actually okay.
yeah,
You've got to let that be. If that's your routine, as long as it's
yeah,
not impacting on your health.
yeah,
We all need rest. If you're getting a good 4 or 5 hours, if you can
yeah.
cope on that, then that's great.
So mate, can I? And look, we don't have to if you don't want to.
Yep.
Like going back to like in your teens, you obviously had some difficult times. What was the turning point? Like I didn't get to the point where I tried suicide. I definitely thought about it. I never attempted anything, but
Yeah.
I've multiple times throughout my life, I've been at that point where I'm
Yeah.
like, what
Is
what
that
am I
the way
doing?
out?
And for me, it wasn't until I took responsibility.
Yeah.
Like
Duayne, I think I have huge empathy for people who go through that process. Some would say that it's a weak, it's weak to make a decision like that. For you to get to that point, I think takes strength.
Yeah. See, I'd never judge anyone for
Yeah.
trying it because I don't know what it's
Yeah,
like. They're obviously going through a lot of
So I
emotion.
think my thing growing up was so from the very first day of school, and this is not a worries me story, but it's the
Yep.
reality of
Yep.
of the circumstance. So first day of school, I was at boarding school. So you're 5 and a bit years old.
Yeah.
You're not at home.
Yeah.
You're in a very different, nurturing environment. And I'm thankful there are a number of teachers in my life that saved me, basically. But from that early age, right up to the last day of school, I was in boarding school. And then
So you went to boarding school your entire schooling?
And then straight out of boarding school into the army. So this whole thing of institutionalized kind of education and structure. And I think, Mum was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And she, I didn't cope. I couldn't help her, and I felt helpless. And part of that made me feel like I didn't belong and I couldn't take care of things. And I think those are the things that played on me. So, yeah, from a young age, I just had this, this is the picture of my life, and I'm not comfortable with it. I want out.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what led to those things.
Yeah.
And then also, struggling with sexuality was a big thing.
Yeah.
For me, there was an expectation that you needed to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Have a family and do all the traditional things.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't going to be me.
Yeah.
So I think the turning point for me, and I remember because it was another institution. So through the army, I ended up in a psychiatric ward for depression, and it was a day like this. It was pouring with rain, and it was just hideous weather, and the room that I was in overlooked a golf course in the army barracks, but it was the army hospital, but there was a golf course.
Yeah.
And there were people out there playing golf. And I went, what the fuck? These people are happy playing golf and it's torrential rain and they're out there. And that was my moment.
That's awesome.
That was my moment of, no matter how bad can it be?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the decision moment. It didn't make the depression and the episodes of, self-doubt and that stuff go away. And it's still with me.
Yeah.
But I learned to manage it better now. I don't go down the path of I want to end my life anymore.
I think.
So I think it's just a different mechanism now for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just recently finished listening to a book, and I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but he's a very successful mentor bloke. He's worked with Tony Robbins and stuff, but he got put in jail for a period of time for something that turned out to be nothing. Yeah. And he took the opportunity while he was in jail to help other inmates, and he wrote a book that is now, I'm pretty sure, distributed in jails around the world, but it was called Muddle Stars.
Yeah.
And it was
that up.
Hey?
I'll look that one up.
Oh, so I don't know if that one's available to the public, but he basically hand wrote and got into the room and typed it out and put together a few copies and then distributed it around the jail. And in the time he was there, he managed to make a big difference to a lot of people's lives. But the thing was, it was a prisoner sits in a cell and looks out the window, and one sees stars, one sees mud.
Yeah.
So one sees mud on the ground, horrible time, struggling with life. The other one looks at the stars and I can do anything.
Wow.
But the fact that you sat in a room to talk through things, and you saw something in people playing golf in the rain, and they were happy and enjoying doing that. Yeah. Is it that? Mate, that's an incredible story.
Well, I think just John, we all have flip moments in our life where and it may be completely meaningless to someone else, but that was my moment.
Yeah.
It was like, okay.
I think that's awesome. So like now, like life is hard. Like there's no doubt about it. Life is hard. And I think there's a lot of people out there that, and in social media, like I'm not a fan of it for this reason, is everyone only sees the good stuff. And it's one reason why I post a lot of shit. Like I'll quite often post a video that I'm having a shit day and I'm dealing with this and this has just happened and feeling down today. I've just come out of...
It's authentic.
Like people need to see that because so much of the shit we see on social media is just face value. And like most of those people posting a lot of that stuff behind the scenes, they're probably struggling with their life. And I think that's really important to show people. And mate, I really appreciate that you've been able to sit here and talk through that situation, because for the people that are watching this, that will go a long way, I think. And because the reality is life is hard. Like every day is definitely not all roses. Like there's always a lot to deal with. And so do you, like, just like even with what's going on at the moment, like if you're anything like me, you do have days where you're just like, what the fuck am I doing this for? Like,
well, I reached out to you last week, and that was exactly, I had reached one of those days where it was like, you know, am I really cut out for this?
Yeah.
And I think we're allowed those days, but to be able to reach out to someone who's not going to judge you for it, who won't necessarily give you advice, but there is a bounce of an idea. Those conversations matter. And I think,
and don't be afraid to have them, I think.
And I think this is the whole thing. The typical, boys don't cry, don't feel, can't talk about your emotions. You know. And I think that's where it all falls apart, is when people are internalizing that stuff all the time. I'm happy to be vocal about it because it releases it for me. And it makes people understand why you might be doing the things that you're doing. It's not an excuse.
So it's cool to be conscious, guys, mate.
Amazing.
So I ended up doing one of their full day experiences.
Yeah. So you got into the freezer, did you?
Yeah, I did the ice bath and all that. And I've mentioned it, I've spoken about it a few times, and I guess it's probably a little bit of me being a little bit closed-minded maybe, but if I had have known what was some of the things were going to be that day,
you probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have done it. And I am so glad that I did, and I'm keen to go back and actually do it again. Like there was a lot of things that we did on the day that put me so far out of my comfort zone.
See, it's vulnerability that is often the thing that challenges us the most. Is to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You don't have to always be the big brave Duayne. Yes, there's an expectation of you to be that, but you're human. You're a feeling being, and if we don't acknowledge that about ourselves, I think that's the danger. But it's find your tribe.
So mate, what's I think that's awesome advice. Find your tribe. I really like that. So mate, let's move on from that. How's Paul get away from it? Like what do you do to get away from it? Or it sounds like you're not doing it enough, but what's your relief?
So I think my guiltiest pleasure or my guiltiest excuse has become work for a long time, and I acknowledge that. And Dean, if you're watching, I think it's important to recognise that there is no balance for me, and that's been a choice for a while. But I'm going to come unstuck pretty soon if I continue on the same path. So downtime for me is the ocean. Downtime for me is reading. Downtime for me is music.
What type of music you listen to?
Broad. It really just depends on my mind frame at the time. I'm not very good at the head banging angry stuff, so not that. but everything else, I think, if there's message, that's what's important for me.
Yeah.
Um,
You've got a couple of dogs.
I've got 2 boxer dogs. I've got 3 animals. I've got a cat and 2 dogs. Tigger, Riley, and Cooper. Cooper's a deaf boxer. In fact, he's deaf and blind in one eye, so he's the one-eyed deaf dog. But amazing creatures. They're my grounding.
Yeah.
Riley is a tan boxer, and he's my boy. So if you follow me on Instagram, he pops up from time to time because he is just the most incredible animal.
Yeah.
He's having teeth done today, so I'm a bit jittery. Um, Dog under anaesthetic, never,
No.
not comfortable moment, but yeah, he'll be fine. And yeah, so my dogs are a big part of my life.
Dogs and cats, depending on what type of person you are, but they're like we've recently acquired another a large German Shepherd. Yeah. I've got an old Staffy that's pushing 14 years old now, but yeah. I get a lot out of. I quite often at the moment, because we've got this new German Shepherd, he's only just turned 1. I'll quite often get up an hour before I've got to go to work and just go and sit with him, play ball. But both of them, even of a night time, like I'll quite often find myself after the kids in bed, Camille and I have had a bit of a chat or whatever, and I'll just go and sit out the back and just sit there and pat them like they don't talk. They seem to just know what you're feeling and what you're going through.
Yeah, when it comes to being intuitive, animals are probably the most intuitive.
Yeah.
They get when we're down, and they get our mood swing, and they get
everything.
I think,
like it's almost like they know before you do. And it's unbelievable how 10 minutes sitting with them, patting them, just chilling out can
fixes things.
Yeah.
It does
can solve your day.
Yeah, absolutely.
But mate, I just absolutely love all the stuff we've been talking about, and we probably didn't get too much into the design stuff. So can we quickly just talk about, like, you're very passionate about what you do. You're, I feel like you give it 150%. Like I feel like whatever clients go with you, they get everything.
Yeah, and I don't always get it right, Duayne. I mean, I'm by no means perfect, but I actually care. And that's the difference, is that I care about the result. I care about the process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't always get it right.
So it's a big part of your process finding out the I guess the intimate details of your clients, how they live, what they like.
I think it's important, for me to understand what it is that we're going to build for them.
Yeah.
Is to understand how they live.
Yeah.
And what is the dream? What does that dream look like? What does it feel like?
Yeah.
The why. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So those kind of questions are really important in the initial phases. And then I go away and I do the dreaming for them. I come up with a potential solution.
Yeah.
We fiddle around with that solution a little bit, and then it goes to a plan, and then I call you and say, can you do this? Which, and some builders won't necessarily be comfortable with that process, but I do think it takes away a lot of this to and fro, and what if we move this wall there, and what if...
Yeah.
Here's the idea. So I call it the recipe. When I speak to clients, I say, let's get the recipe right, and then we'll go to the builder and see if we can actually make this stuff. If the ingredients are there to make this.
Doing like where we're at with our process, I think having the builder involved during that design is incredibly powerful. But my advice for builders out there is that you're not there to take over. Like I'm there to provide efficiencies, cost input. You're the designer, so I don't want to step on your toes. And
the interesting thing about that, though, Duayne, and certainly for me, and I can't speak for other designers, but for me, it is to understand that there is a budget.
Yeah,
and try and I have good enough insight into the industry and what things cost.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky that way. But I think the important thing is to understand that there is a budget.
Yeah.
You can't, and Amelia talks about this.
Yeah.
You can't be indulgent with people's money.
Yeah.
You have to hear that I have X amount of money. This is what I can spend. What I do differently, though, is I will always design the Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
This is your dream. This is what you want. Now let's cost that.
Yeah.
So that you have a real picture of what your dream costs.
Yeah.
And then go back from there. I think when the failing
Because if they don't
for
know the
our
overall
industry, if they don't understand the overall, the failing for our industry are there's still operators who go in low to win business.
Yeah.
And then the variation trap is just, it's too big.
Yeah.
And then
it's huge.
People are halfway through a build process and they have to spend the money to finish.
It's the main reason our industry's got such a bad name. And I do a similar thing with some of the jobs the designers we work with. Like the design, like people will put everything into their design brief, and if you don't educate and show them what that physically is, they're always going to question, well, why didn't we get that, or why couldn't we do that? Because once you've educated and shown them that, they can then make an educated decision. Well, actually, we're happy to spend more money, or look,
because they can see the value then.
Yeah, they can see the value, but then they can make a decision. Well, yes, we're happy to spend. We'll actually increase our budget because that's what we want.
Exactly.
Or no, this is our budget. We can't move it. We're going to have to prioritise what we take out.
What do we do to get to the budget?
Yeah.
And how we do that smartly.
Yeah.
Without compromising the dream completely.
Yeah. So, mate, what's your best part of the job? Design, handover, seeing the client cry, giving them the keys. Like, what's the best thing in your?
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah. I think, that very first conversation is always an exciting one. And it doesn't mean that every client or potential client that you speak to is going to be a good match.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning to do better now is go through a process of really checking that all parties are comfortable with one another.
Yeah.
One of my biggest projects to date was it started, the conversation was, can you do a color consult for me? And now when I get those calls, I always have a internal giggle about it, because I just remember this project that was a color consult, $180 color consult, because it was an internal paint color.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're painting. And they spent $1 million.
Shivers. Yeah.
But the lesson I learned from that particular project was that I fell in love with the project. I wasn't in love with the client.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fine line between having this vision for a project and having a really good synergy with the clients.
Yeah.
And yes, you get uncomfortable moments with clients because there could be conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's how you manage that. I'm not very good with conflict.
Well, most people in our industry aren't.
Yeah, and I think, but there is going to be conflict from time to time, and it's just how we manage that. And I'm still learning that all the time, how to better manage it, but still be authentic. You can learn from a textbook about how to structure a conflict conversation, but if it doesn't sound like you, then it's going to fail. So you've got to be very careful.
Yeah.
So yes, all of it, Duayne. But yes, that very first conversation about let's talk about the idea, and then seeing the idea going onto paper. So spatial design stuff we can do, but the minute it becomes structural, I work very closely with building designer Natalie from the outside perspective, and she's absolutely amazing. We just get one another.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. So there's part of the collaboration, and it just works.
Yeah, mate, you can see the passion as you're talking about it. Mate, that has been an incredible chat. Thanks very much for taking the time out to have a bit of a chat to us and talking about the things that you've discussed. It's been fantastic. I'm sure everyone's got a hell of a lot out of that. And congratulations on all your achievement and what you've done with your life so far. And definitely look forward to seeing where you go from here and catching up in the future. Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Duayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.